The year I turned 18, my parents were in a car accident on our way to my college. Move-in day. They died instantly and I was left paralyzed. My brother Jake and his wife saw me as nothing but a burden, so they dumped me at my sister Ava's doorstep. Luckily, Ava never resented me. I was paralyzed for a decade and she took care of me for every single one of those 10 years. To cover my medical bills, she juggled 3 jobs a day, her body breaking down from sheer exhaustion. Her husband, Leo, finally snapped. If you keep looking after your sister, we're getting a divorce. Ava didn't hesitate. She divorced him on the spot. Her selfless actions touched hearts across the internet and she was dubbed America's most amazing sister. Everyone envied me for having such a wonderful sister until I won the lottery and got $10 million. But I transferred all of it to my brother, Jake. The entire internet condemned me as ungrateful. A reporter, Mr. Davis, found me. You've been paralyzed for a decade. Your brother hasn't looked after you for a single day. Your sister Ava has stuck by you, taken on a mountain of debt, and even sacrificed for marriage. Why didn't you give her a single penny? I looked up at Mr. Davis, my voice calm. Set up hidden cameras in my house for a 3-day secret live stream and you'll understand why. As soon as the hidden cameras were installed, the secret live stream began. Ava walked in after work, dark circles under her eyes. She dragged herself to my bedside, preparing to clean up the mess. There wasn't a flicker of disgust in her eyes, only heartache and self-reproach. Riley, did you have an upset stomach last night? She touched my forehead, blaming herself. I'm so sorry. It's all my fault. I've been so exhausted from work lately that I slept like a rock. I forgot to check on you in the middle of the night and keep your blanket on. You must have been uncomfortable. I watched her silently, not speaking. The live stream comments exploded. My God, this sister is incredible. She just got home from work, saw this mess, and her first reaction was to blame herself. If I'd worked all day and came home to that, I'd be fuming. She really is America's most amazing sister. She's making me cry. Ava didn't know about the hidden live stream. She turned me carefully, preparing to help me shower, but she was exhausted. Even with all her strength, she struggled to lift me. Just then, a knock sounded at the door. Ava opened it to find my brother Jake standing there. What are you doing here? She asked, surprised. Jake had a cigarette dangling from his lips. If I'm not mistaken, this apartment is the one Mom and Dad gifted Riley when she got into college, right? As Riley's brother, there's no big deal if I stay here for a few days, is there? Without waiting for permission, he barged in. Ava was too tired to argue, so she said, then lend me a hand and help me get Riley to the bathroom. I need to give her a shower. Jake shot me a disgusted look. That's sickening. She reeks of pee and poop. No way am I touching her. Ava frowned. Jake, Riley is your own sister. She just gave you $10 million. How can you refuse to even help her? Jake scoffed. She gave me the money willingly. You're not trying to guilt trip me, are you? I respect all of Riley's decisions, Ava said. She gave you her winnings because she wanted you and your wife to live. Well, she's so good to you. Can't you be a little good to her? Jake sneered. What's the point of being good to her? She's just a paralyzed invalid, a waste of space for a decade. I don't know why you bother taking care of this useless person every day. She'd be better off dead. The live stream chat exploded with outrage. Is this guy even human? Wishing his own sister dead after getting $10 million from her. Her sister slaved for a decade taking care of her, went into debt, lost her marriage and got nothing in return. This girl must be insane. Jake didn't help. It took Ava over an hour to clean me up. She was drenched in sweat, but she still meticulously changed my clothes and settled me in my wheelchair. Riley, you must be hungry. I'll go make you dinner. Due to exhaustion, Ava almost fainted when she stood up, but she forced herself to walk to the kitchen. Soon she brought out grilled salmon, beef stew, steamed greens, and a pot of chicken soup. She blew on a spoonful of soup before bringing it to my lips. Riley, this chicken soup is made from the organic chicken I bought at the local farm. You always loved it as a kid. Try some.
I
Turned my head coldly.
I don't want to eat.
Riley, you already had an upset stomach. If you don't eat, your body won't recover, she said gently. I don't have an appetite. Then I looked at Jake, lounging on the couch playing on his
Phone.
Jake, I want that pastry on the coffee table. Jake didn't even look up. I bought that for myself.
If you want.
One, push your wheelchair and buy your own. Ava glared at him, then turned to
Me.
eat your dinner first. I'll buy you a pastry after.
Okay.
I shook my head, stubbornly, refusing to eat. The comments exploded again. Is she insane? Refusing her sister's home-cooked meal, but demanding her brother's pastry. Her sister's killing herself working and she acts like this.
Disgusting.
The first day of the live stream ended with a chat filled with insults toward
Me.
the next day. Ava came home earlier, holding a warm bag. Riley, you wanted a
Pastry yesterday, right?
I bought it after work. It's your favorite savory.
Kind. Try it.
She handed it to me, smiling softly. I glanced at it, indifferently. I don't want it now. Ava's smile faltered, but she forced cheerfulness. What do you want to eat? I'll make it for you. I don't want anything you make. I maneuvered my wheelchair toward the balcony.
On the
Way, I bumped into Jake, who was holding a liquor bottle. It slipped and shattered on the floor. Are you blind? You spilled my expensive liquor, he yelled, then kicked my wheelchair hard. It tilted dangerously. Riley, Ava screamed, rushing forward to shield me. Her hand was gashed open, blood running down her arm. Ignoring the pain, she steadied me and turned to Jake.
You.
Almost hurt Riley. Jake glared.
She's
Useless. She can't even feel pain.
why?
Are you overreacting? Then he stomped back to his room. Ava checked me all over, then tightened the loosened buckle on my wheelchair, working late into the night despite her bleeding hand.
The
Comments went wild again. Where can you find a sister this good? Her hands bleeding and she's fixing the wheelchair. Why is she cursed with such an ungrateful, heartless sister? Even Mr. Davis called me. Do you know what people are saying about you?
your
Sister's done everything for you and you act like this. There's one last day, I said calmly. Then you'll understand.
on
The third morning, Ava came in as usual. Riley, how are you feeling today?
is
Your appetite better? She massaged my limbs, preventing muscle atrophy. Her movements gentle as ever. Riley, look how nice the weather is. After breakfast, I'll push you outside for a walk. The doctor said it's good for
you. No, thanks. She didn't insist.
She just fetched warm water, washed my face, and made breakfast. The comments rolled in again, full of judgment. Later, she pushed me to the balcony to bask in the sun. She combed my hair, trimmed my nails, cleaned my ears, every inch of care. Then she sat beside me, gripping my hand. Riley, do you remember when we were little? You loved
Sunbathing.
on my wedding day. You cried
So much you wouldn't let go of my hand.
You once said your biggest wish was for me to be happy. Her eyes shimmered with
Tears.
her phone rang, but she ignored it, looking at me instead. Riley, it's
Time.
I smiled faintly. The moment had
Come.
Ava straightened, gave me a cryptic look, and then she did something that stunned every single viewer watching the live stream. The moment Ada stood up from her chair, the entire chat room froze. Her lips curved into a tired, almost peaceful smile.
Without a
Word. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a small key, and unlocked the drawer of the old cabinet beside the balcony door. Inside was a neat pile of envelopes, some worn, others sealed perfectly. She took one out and placed it gently on my lap. Riley, she said, softly, her voice trembling yet steady. No matter what happens after today, please remember that I never regretted taking care of you. Not even once. Before I could respond, she turned away, heading into the kitchen. The live stream continued rolling. Thousands of viewers typing furiously, wondering what she meant. A moment later, the faint hiss of gas filled the speakers. Ava stood by the stove, her hand hovering over the knob, her expression distant, almost serene. Ava, I shouted, my heart pounding, but my voice came out weak, trapped within my paralyzed body. She looked back at me one last time, her eyes filled with unbearable tenderness. You've suffered enough, Riley.
It's
Time, everyone knows the truth. The screen flashed white. The live stream camera shook violently before cutting to black. For a full minute, there was only silence. Then chaos erupted.
The chat
Exploded with messages. Some panicked, others horrified. What happened?
Did she?
Just know, she wouldn't call the police. Someone call the police. Emergency siren soon echoed faintly through the speakers. When the camera reconnected, firefighters were breaking down the
door.
Smoke billowed out as two medics rushed toward me. Ava's body lay, crumpled near the stove, her hands still clutching a small note. The next hours blurred together. I was taken to the hospital surrounded by flashing lights, reporters, and the noise of 1,000 questions. Mr. Davis arrived not long after, looking pale and shaken.
He sat
Beside my bed, his voice low. Riley, I need to ask, did you know she was planning this? I closed my eyes.
No, but
I knew she was at her limit. He frowned, confusion replacing anger. What did she mean by the truth? Everyone online thinks you're the villain in this story. They saw you ignore her kindness, disrespect her, even side with your brother. Help me understand. I turned my head toward the window. Outside, the city pulsed with life, oblivious, uncaring. The truth, I said quietly, isn't what they think it is. It never
was.
3 days later, the story became the biggest headline in the country. America's most amazing sister dies, protecting her paralyzed sibling. Millions of people mourn her. Online, memorials flooded in. People sent donations, flowers, and sympathy. Messages addressed to me, the ungrateful, who destroyed an angel. I read every message, every insult, every accusation, and yet I felt nothing. Only a cold emptiness that settled deep in my
chest.
Then during the funeral, Jake showed up. He wore a black suit that clearly hadn't been ironed, his eyes hidden behind sunglasses.
His wife
Trailed behind, holding his arm like a trophy. As the pastor spoke about Ava's sacrifice, Jake leaned toward me and whispered, "You did this. You know, if you hadn't made her work herself to death for you, she'd still be here."
I
didn't reply. I simply stared at the photograph of Ava framed in white leaves, her smile radiant and pure. When the ceremony ended, reporters surrounded Jake, shoving microphones into his face. "Mr. Carter, how do you feel about your sister's tragic death?" One asked.
Jake
Sighed dramatically. "Ava was a saint. She did everything for my sister Riley, but Riley never appreciated her.
She
even gave me her lottery winnings out of guilt, trying to make up for how she treated Ava. But money can't bring her back." The crowd murmured sympathetically. Cameras flashed.
Jake
Played his role perfectly. The grieving brother, the moral compass. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling of the house that had once been filled with AA's laughter. Now it echoed with silence. The hidden cameras were still there, untouched, and so were the recordings. I waited until midnight, then called Mr. Davis. "Meet me tomorrow," I said. "Bring your camera, crew, and make sure you stream it live. I'll give you your real story." The next morning, the world watched as Mr. Davis entered my house again. The air was heavy with grief and curiosity. I was in my wheelchair positioned by the same balcony where Ava had spent her final
moments.
The envelopes she had left were neatly stacked on the table beside me. "Riley," Mr. Davis began, his voice cautious. "Before we start, I want to remind you that everything you say today will go public. Are you sure you want that?" "Yes," I said. Ava wanted the truth.
Out.
She just didn't live to see it happen. He nodded slowly. "Then let's begin." I picked up the first envelope. "This one," I said, "is the hospital bill from 10 years ago, the day I was paralyzed. My parents died instantly, but I survived. The insurance money, $100,000, was supposed to cover my treatment." I paused, staring into the camera. "My brother Jake took it." Mr. Davis blinked. "He took your insurance payout?" "Yes. He told the hospital he would handle my bills, then transferred the money to his own account. I didn't know until years later, when the collectors came for me. Ava paid everything, every cent of that debt with 3 jobs in her marriage." The live stream chat began to explode again, but this time it wasn't hate. It was disbelief. I opened the second envelope. This is proof that Ava took multiple loans under her name, not for me but for Jake. He told her he'd invest the money and return it with interest.
She
Believed him. Instead, he used it for gambling and alcohol. She never told me, because she didn't want me to hate him. Mr. Davis's expression hardened. And the $10 million you gave him, that was part of her plan, I said quietly. Ava begged me to give him the money. She said it would make things right. At first I thought she was insane, but later I understood. She knew he'd show his true colors when the world was watching.
I
Took a deep breath. Those 3 days of live stream weren't to expose me. They were to expose him. The third envelope contained photos, hidden camera stills from the past month. Jake sneaking into the house while Ava was at work.
Jake
Stealing from my wallet, even selling Ava's jewelry online. I held them up to the camera one by one. She knew he'd come back. She wanted the world to see what kind of man he really was. Mr. Davis looked shaken. And Ava's death. My voice broke slightly. She was exhausted. She wanted to end the pain, but she made sure her sacrifice wouldn't be meaningless. That's why she looked into the camera before she turned on the gas. She wanted people to finally see. The live stream chat was flooded with apologies now. Thousands of viewers crying, begging forgiveness, realizing they had condemned the wrong person. Mr. Davis wiped his eyes. Riley, what will you do now? I looked down at the final envelope. Inside was a letter written in AA's delicate handwriting. I unfolded it, slowly, reading aloud. Riley, if you're reading this, it means I've already left. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to stay, but please don't blame yourself. I wanted you to live free, not trapped by guilt or hate. I loved you since the day you were born, and I'll keep loving you even when I'm gone. Promise me you'll use what's left not for revenge, but for peace.
Tears
Blurred my vision. For the first time in years, I let them fall. I turned back to the camera. This house, the story, it's not about pity or forgiveness. It's about truth. My sister wasn't just America's most amazing sister. She was my entire world, and now the world knows it too. Mr. Davis ended the live stream with trembling hands. The footage went viral within hours.
Jake tried to deny
Everything, but the evidence was undeniable. His accounts were frozen. His lies exposed, his reputation destroyed. Days later, I received a package with Ava's ashes and a note from the funeral director. She requested to be buried somewhere sunny, where the wind never stops. So I took her to the small park near our old home, the same one where she used to push my wheelchair on warm afternoons. I scattered her ashes beneath the maple tree, whispering the word she once said to me when I was a child. The sun always makes you feel better. The wind brushed against my face, warm and gentle like her hand once
was.
And for the first time in a decade, I felt something shift inside me.
Not
Guilt, not sorrow, but a quiet, fragile
peace.
That night, as I turned off the lights, I heard the faint ping of a notification on my phone.
It was a
message from Mr. Davis. The world's calling you a hero now. I smiled faintly, in the dark. No, I whispered. The hero was Ava. I just lived long enough to tell her story. And somewhere beyond the silence, I could almost hear her laughter again, soft, tired, and full of love. The morning after I scattered Ava's ashes, the sky looked washed and clean, like someone had finally opened a window in a stale room. I wheeled myself to the balcony and let the light touch my face. The maple leaves clicked softly against one another. For a long time, I only listened. No cameras, no sirens, no voices telling me what I was, just the wind and a new quiet I did not yet recognize as hope. My phone would not stop buzzing. Brands wanted to donate medical equipment. Strangers wanted to send meals. A university hospital offered to reevaluate my care plan at no cost. Mr. Davis texted links to article after article. The headlines were different now. They used words like injustice and truth and systemic failure. They paired Ava's smiling photo with mine, not to shame me, but to ask how the world had gotten it so wrong. By noon, he called. His voice was gentler than before. I have a request, he said. The district attorney saw the stream.
They want to talk to you about the
Insurance payout and the loans Ava took. If you are willing, I can accompany you. I looked at the envelopes on the table. I had slept with them beside me like talismans. I am willing, I said.
the DAS.
Office occupied a gray building that looked like it had been designed to intimidate. Inside, the conference room was brighter. A woman introduced herself as Assistant District Attorney Keller. She offered water, sat, and listened without interrupting as I traced the road from the hospital 10 years ago to the 3-day live stream. When I finished, she folded her hands. We will need bank records, she said. Transaction histories. You mentioned Jake took control of the insurance funds. We can subpoena the hospital and the insurer. Do you have AVAS loan documents? I had. More than that, I had the small key Ava had used before everything went white. I had not known what had opened until that morning when I found a lockbox tucked behind a stack of old blankets in the hall closet. Inside were folders labeled with dates, account numbers, and the kind of tidy notes that only someone who planned to carry a secret alone for a very long time would make. I slid the folders across the table. Keller's eyes softened when she saw the neat columns of Ava's handwriting. She was meticulous, Keller said. This will help. We spoke for 2 hours. When I left, Mr. Davis wheeled me to the curb and waited with me while the driver loaded my
chair.
He hesitated, then asked, How are you holding up, really? I startled at the question. I had expected more requests for quotes, more talk of ratings. I do not know, I said. Truthfully, I have been angry for so long that I cannot tell where the anger ends and I begin. But I promised Ava I would choose peace. I'm trying to learn what that means. That night, the DAS office filed motions to freeze Jake's accounts. 2 days later, detectives interviewed me again, this time about the incident with a kicked wheelchair. They asked if there had been other assaults. I said yes. The camera footage captured enough. It turned out the internet does not forget anything. People clipped the worst moments into short videos that traveled faster than any apology ever could. Jake did not go quietly. He appeared on a podcast and called me manipulative. He said I had staged everything because I craved attention. He said Ava had been unstable and that I had exploited her. He put on the same pair of sunglasses as the funeral and leaned back as if his chair were a throne. That afternoon, Keller called. We are moving forward with theft by conversion, insurance fraud, and assault. She said if he keeps speaking publicly, that is his problem. We will keep working. I thanked her, then turned off my phone. I needed a different kind of noise. The next morning, a physical therapist named Mara arrived at my door. She was not part of any media plan. She was a friend of a nurse from the hospital that reached out. She entered with a duffel and a pragmatic smile. I watched the stream, she said, placing a folded mat on the floor. People think recovery is explosive, like a miracle. But in my experience, it is a math problem. Small additions repeated. If you are open to it, I would like to meet you where you are, not where the internet wants you to be. I surprised myself by saying yes. We began with breath, then posture, then micro movements that no camera would ever praise, yet still felt mountainous. She taught me how to notice when I was clenching my jaw. She put a metronome app on my phone and told me to inhale for 4 beats and exhale for 6. She said, the nervous system listens when you count. Numbers reassure the parts of you that do not believe words. At noon, we took a break and ate the soup a neighbor had left at the door. The sun moved across the floor. It felt like a friend who had been away too long. Between sessions, I sorted what Ava had left behind. The lockbox did not just hold numbers. It held memory. There were Polaroids of us as kids, tongues blue from shaved ice, hair frizzing in the humidity. There was a scribbled list. Title places Riley loved when she was little, parked by the river, the bakery on 3rd with the vanilla buns, the library window seat. At the bottom, Ava had added day off wish list. Sleep until 10, walk with Riley, make a real dinner without reheating anything, paint nails dark red. It had never been crossed off. I carried that list to the balcony and Sat with it the way people sit with a flag on a battlefield. I had no medals to give her. I had only the life she wanted me to live. The DS subpoenas did their work. Bank statements arrived like a confession written in numbers. Transfers from the insurer to a checking account in Jake's named 2 days after the
Crash.
cash, withdrawals the same week.
A.
Balloon of credit card debt that mapped perfectly onto the dates of Ava's loans. Sports book payments. ATM photos.
For A.
While all I could do was stare at the timestamps. I knew those days. I knew what the hospitals smelled like that
Week.
what the linoleum felt like under Ava's sneakers when she stood waiting for the elevator to bring her up to me. Keller arranged a recorded statement.
I took it.
She asked me to describe the night Jake kicked my chair. She asked what I had felt when he called me a waste of space. I told her that when you are paralyzed, the world tries to convince you that your value is measured by the efficiency of other people as
Care.
I told her Ava had been the only one who ever refused that math. 3 weeks after the stream, the police served a warrant. Jake was let out of his townhouse in cuffs. The internet
Captured that too.
his sunglasses were
Gone.
in their place. His eyes looked small and cornered. The charges were read on the sidewalk. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Someone clapped once. The clip looped through the feeds that had once called me heartless. His wife went to her mother's house and posted a long message about betrayal and choosing herself. The comments told her she was
Brave.
maybe she was. Maybe it was simply convenient. I did not read past the first paragraph. I was learning that sometimes self-preservation looks like looking away. The arraignment happened on a Friday morning. I woke before dawn and listened to the quiet of the house. My chair rolled over the same scuff marks Ava had made when she rushed to answer the door in the middle of the night for delivery shifts. I sat by the balcony and watched the light gather over rooftops until it was time to go. The courthouse steps felt steeper than they looked. Mr. Davis met me by the ramp. He did not bring a crew.
Not today, he said.
Today, I am just a friend who'll sit beside you. We took our places in the second row. Jake was brought in wearing county orange.
He
avoided my face. When the judge read the charges, he smirked at first. But smirks are expensive.
He could not maintain it.
By the time bail was set, the smirk had collapsed into something that looked like worry. Keller asked for no contact with me as a condition. The judge granted it. It felt like a fence being built around a garden that had been trampled for years. Outside, microphones waited. Mr. Davis guided me to the edge of the steps and let me decide.
For a
moment, I considered moving past them. Then I heard Ava's voice the way she used to say my name when she wanted me to stop hiding. I turned to the cameras. There will be time for analysis. I said, for now, remember this. When you see a caregiver, you are witnessing an athlete of love. Their work looks soft, but it is made of steel.
Do not measure them by
what they repair. Measure them by what they choose again and again when no one is looking. Someone asked if I forgave Jake. The word sat heavy between us, like an anvil. Forgiveness is not a performance, I
said.
It is a door you open at the right time, not because someone bangs on it, but because the house finally feels safe enough to keep living in. I'm still building my house. Back at home, Mara was waiting with the mat in the same patient economy of motion. We practice transfers. We practice turning my torso without letting my neck stiffen.
She
laughed when I cursed the metronome. I laughed too, which startled me so much that I cried. She did not hand me a tissue. She went to the kitchen and returned with 2 clean dish towels, because tissues are never enough for what grief actually does.
In the
afternoon, I received an email from a community center across town. They had an accessible art studio and wanted to know if I might like to visit. I had not drawn since the accident. My hands remembered lines, but my shoulders had been stubborn for years. I told them yes. I told them I would be slow. They said the studio had all day. The first time I rolled into that room, the air smelled like clay paint. A woman with silver hair and kind eyes introduced herself as Lark. She placed a charcoal stick in my hand. No rules, she said. Mark the page any way you can. We will adjust the tools around you, not the other way around. I taped paper to the easel at a height that matched my chair. I made lines that looked like wrong turns on a map.
Lark.
Brought me a wider grip. I made bolder
Lines.
She moved the stool so I could swing my arm further. The marks stopped, apologizing for themselves, and began to look like a forest scene from inside the
Trees.
My breath fell into the rhythm Mara had taught me. 4 beats in, 6 beats out. Count and stroke. Count and stroke. Somewhere in that simple map, I felt Ava's palm resting warm against my back, the way she used to anchor me when a nurse had to move me and I was afraid of falling. News from the DA arrived in pieces. A plea was offered.
Jake.
Rejected it. His attorney filed motions to suppress the footage from the hidden cameras, claiming invasion of privacy. Keller countered that the cameras were in my home, that the footage was core to explaining intent and context, that the public stream had already placed the recordings in a different legal posture. The judge took it under advisement.
On
The day of the ruling, the courtroom was almost full. Advocacy groups had shown
up.
A nurse from my old ward came and squeezed my hand. Mr. Davis sat on my other side. When the judge ruled the footage admissible, there was no cheering, only a collective exhale that seemed to lift dust mows into brighter
Air.
Trial was set for the fall.
The
internet spun theories. Mr. Davis asked if I would do a long-form piece about caregiving and what it costs. I said yes, on one condition. We would not use tragedy as a hook. We would start with Mondays, the laundry, the scheduling, the way Ava had used a highlighter to color code her 3 jobs and still managed to draw smiley faces next to my physical therapy appointments so I would not dread them. Mr. Davis agreed. The piece became the most watched segment of
the year.
People recognized themselves in lists of ordinary tasks. Donations to caregiver respite programs spiked.
A
Local lawmaker reached out about drafting a bill that would make family caregivers eligible for certain state benefits. For the first time, attention felt like a tool, not a weapon. One quiet afternoon, the lockbox key gave me one last gift. I found a second, smaller key taped under the lid, and with it a note in Ava's delicate print bank box. She had written for Riley, SIs only. The address led to a branch we had walked past hundreds of times. The manager guided me to a small room and left me alone with a box that weighed more than it looked. Inside were cashier
checks made out to me with dates from
the last 3 years, each for small amounts, each annotated in Ava's hand. For emergency, for the day you want to buy something, just because, for the day you want to take a class. There was also a simple gold ring I recognized from our childhood, the one she had hidden in her shoebox after our mother died, because she said some things should live near the heart or the feet. There was a letter to Riley. It began in the same looping script. If you have found this, it means the part of the story that belonged to me is finished. The part that belongs to you is beginning.
I
wanted to leave you proof that I was building a future for you, even when I
could not look past the next shift. If
the world is loud, step outside.
The
maple will tell you the weather of your own soul. If you ever doubt what you deserve, go to the places on the list and let your body remember. Love is a direction. Walk in it as far as you can. I brought the ring to my lips like a child and forgave the child inside me, who had believed for years that needing help was a tax on love. In July, the judge granted a motion to allow victim impact statements during sentencing if there was a conviction. Keller asked if I would consider writing one.
I said
yes. She told me to take my time.
I
asked her what to include. She said the truth, the real one, the kind that does not audition for sympathy, the kind that stands up straight even when your legs cannot. So I wrote at the balcony table. I wrote with a metronome off so that time could unspool without discipline. I wrote about the night nurses and broken elevators and the way Ava had learned to fix the chair with a butter knife when all the tools were in the car. I wrote about the first pastry, the one I refused because I needed the world to watch him say no. I wrote about love as a ledger that is not supposed to require a witness but sometimes must, so that the numbers will finally add up to a life. By August, I could sit longer without my shoulder seizing. Mara taught me how to brace my core when a curb cut was too steep. Lark introduced me to ceramics. The first bowl I tried slumped like a tired moon. The second held. The third surprised us both with its symmetry. I gave that one a simple glaze and set it on the windowsill, above the sink where Ava used to line up the spices she could never afford in bulk. The bowl caught the light at 5 p.m. every day. I started building my afternoons around that moment like it was a small private holiday. Once late, when the neighborhood was quiet, my phone lit with an unknown number.
It was.
A collect call from the county jail.
I
let it ring out, then sat in the dark and counted my breath until the shake-in. My hands went away. In the morning, I told Keller. She added it to the file. The fence around the garden held. On the first cool night of September, I rolled to the park with Mr. Davis and set the camera on a tripod pointed at the maple
tree.
We let it run while the leaves
Moved.
Then he recorded my voice reading Ava's letter to her. The segment aired without graphics or score. The network executives called it brave. We called it honest. People wrote in saying they watched it with the sound off first, then again with the sound on, then again with someone they loved. Someone mailed a photograph of a southern maple with a note that said, "This is where we are, putting the bench in our town. We are engraving her name." In the days leading to trial, I slept poorly.
Grief is a
patient animal. It curls at the foot of the bed and waits for the room to go quiet. In those hours, I spoke to Ava out loud. I told her about the ceramic
bowl,
about the way Mara snorted when I tried to cheat a rep, about the bakery on Third keeping savory buns warm for me on Thursdays, about the bill a lawmaker had actually introduced named the Ava Act by a staffer who had lost her own mother last year to exhaustion. I told her about the ring and how sometimes I wore it on a chain because my fingers swelled in the heat. I told her I was afraid of court and of what the verdict would do to the story we had built with such cost. The night before jury selection, a storm moved in without announcement. Wind jerked the branches. Rain came down like a curtain. I rolled to the balcony door and watched the maple thrash. It was bright and it was cleansing, and it was also just weather. I went to bed, and for the first time in months, I slept through until morning. Trial would begin the next day. Keller had warned me it would be ugly. Jake, as attorney, would try to call AA's mental health into question. They would try to frame the live stream as manipulation. They would float words like unstable and grief and say that people do irrational things when tired. They would call me vindictive. They would try to shrink 10 years into 3 bad days because 3 bad days are easier to sell.
I
understood, but I had something they did not have. I had time, and I had lists, and I had a garden that was starting to grow again. I had the map of small additions. I had a bowl that caught light exactly when the day needed it. I had a breath that knew how to count itself home. Early before dawn, I placed Ava's ring on its chain and hooked it around my neck. I put the lockbox key in my pocket, even though there was nothing left to open. I told the maple I would be back by late afternoon. It did not answer,
but it moved in a way that felt like a
promise. Mr. Davis met me in the lobby with 2 coffees and no questions.
Mara
texted a single word, steady. Lark sent a photograph of a new glaze test, labeled sun after rain. We stepped into the elevator, and the doors closed on the quiet house that was learning to sound like mine. The numbers above the frame counted up 1, 2, 3. Small additions, the kind that if you do not stop eventually become a floor you can stand on. When the doors opened at the courthouse level, the hall was full. Not just media, neighbors, nurses, a teacher from my old school, a cashier from the farm stand where Ava used to buy the organic chicken. Some of them carried flowers. Some carried nothing but their faces, open and serious. They parted to make a
path.
I rolled forward. This is not a victory march. I thought this is attendance. The taking of attendance for a life that almost went unrecorded.
I
did not know the verdict that would come weeks later or the exact words I would say when the time for impact statements
arrived.
I only knew that Chapter 4 would begin inside this building, not as a spectacle, but as an accounting. The kind that made AA proud. The kind that told the truth without special effects. In my pocket, my fingers closed around the small key until the metal warmed.
I
Breathe in 4. I breathed out 6. Love is a direction she had written.
walk in it as far as you can. So I did.
The courtroom air felt heavy with waiting. When the bailiff called the session to order, the murmurs in the gallery faded to a low hum. I could hear the echo of each footstep across the marble floor, the shuffle of papers, the faint crackle of microphones. This was the final day. 10 years of silence, 3 days of truth, and months of reckoning had led here.
Jake sat at the
Defense table, thinner than before, his once careless arrogance replaced by a dull weariness. He avoided my gaze, his shoulders slumped as though gravity had finally remembered him. Across from him, Auda Keller organized her folders, calm and deliberate. I watched her, thankful that someone like Ava's spirit could find its echo in this woman.
steady.
Precise, unshakable. The judge entered. Everyone rose. I stayed seated, my wheelchair humming softly as I adjusted my posture. Court is now in session, the clerk announced. Keller began her closing argument. Her voice was neither cold nor angry. It was steady like a current that had carried us all here. Your Honor, members of the jury, this case is not about money. It's about betrayal of trust, of duty, and of love. For years, the defendant, Jacob Carter, took advantage of his paralyzed sister and the woman who cared for her.
He
Stole insurance funds meant for medical
care.
He manipulated Ava Carter into taking out loans in his name.
He
Ridiculed the very people who kept him afloat. And when the world began to see his cruelty, he hid behind excuses.
but
The truth, as we've seen from both witness accounts and video evidence, is undeniable. She paused, letting the silence stretch. The live stream was painful to watch, but it showed us what real sacrifice looks like and what real selfishness
costs.
Ava Carter died not just from exhaustion but from carrying too much for too long. And still, even in her last act, she sought justice, not vengeance. She wanted the world to see what kindness looks like when it's pushed past breaking. Then Keller looked
Toward me.
We honor her not with pity, but with truth. The defense tried to undo what could not be undone. Jake's lawyer painted Ava as emotionally unstable, suggested that years of caregiving had warped her sense of reason. He said Jake was only reacting to pressure, that the live stream had been edited to distort his tone, that the internet's rage had already punished him enough. But lies don't age well. They wilt under light. When it was time for the verdict, the jury filed back into the room. I counted their steps like heartbeats. One of them, a young woman with red hair tied into a bun, looked at me for a brief second and then at the judge.
On the
Charge of insurance fraud, the four-person said, we find the defendant guilty. Jake exhaled sharply.
on the
Charge of assault, the voice continued, guilty. On the charge of theft by deception, guilty. The final word hung in the air, steady and unmovable. Jake's attorney whispered something to him, but he just stared at the floor, lips trembling. The judge thanked the jury and then turned to me. Miss Carter, she said gently, you have the right to deliver a statement before sentencing. I nodded. Mara had helped me rehearse the breathing.
4 beats in, 6 beats out.
I rolled forward slightly, facing the room. When the world first heard about my sister, I began. They called her an angel. They called me ungrateful. They called him misunderstood. But names don't change what people do in the dark. Ava didn't need wings. She needed rest, kindness, and truth. She carried all of us until her body couldn't anymore. And Jake, I looked at him, not with hatred, but with the weariness of someone who had already buried too much. You took everything from her, money, sleep, years, dignity. But you didn't take her
Love.
You couldn't, because love like hers doesn't belong to people like you. It belongs to the ones who stay when no one else does. So I won't curse you.
Jake.
I won't wish you pain. I'll wish you what Ava gave me, the chance to face yourself. And I hope one day you finally
Do.
The judge's eyes softened.
She said.
The sentence calmly. 15 years with eligibility for parole after 10.
When
The gavel struck wood, the echo didn't sound like punishment. It sounded like an ending. Outside, reporters gathered, like waves against the courthouse steps. Mr. Davis stood beside me, shielding me from the crush of microphones.
Do you want to say anything?
He asked quietly. I thought of AA's letter.
Love is a
Direction. Walk in it as far as you can. No statements, I said. Not today. The crowd parted as I left. For once, no one shouted questions. They just watched, silent as I rolled toward the van, waiting at the curb.
The weeks that
Followed felt strange, pieces quieter than you expect. It hums beneath the noise like an old song rediscovered.
I
Kept working with Mara. My arms grew stronger. I learned how to transfer myself to bed without help, how to maneuver uneven sidewalks without fear. The maple outside the apartment began to turn red. Each leaf seemed to glow from within. One morning, a letter arrived from the DA's office. Jake had confessed to additional charges, more loans under Ava's name, more lies. The evidence had cornered him completely. I read the statement once, folded it, and placed it in the lockbox with the rest. I didn't feel triumph. I felt completion. Mr. Davis visited often. His documentary about the case, The Sister Who Stayed, had reached millions. But what surprised both of us was what happened next. People began writing letters not about
Jake but about Ava.
A nurse in Texas wrote, I left an abusive husband after watching your story. I remembered my own worth. A student from Canada wrote, my brother is disabled. I used to feel
Trapped.
now I feel proud. A retired woman wrote, I planted a maple tree in my yard. I named it Ava. The world had finally learned to see her. Winter
Arrived.
on the anniversary of the live stream. I visited the park where I had scattered her ashes. Snow dusted the branches of the maple, delicate as lace. I brought a small plaque engraved with her favorite saying, the sun always makes you feel better. I pressed it into the soil and whispered, you were right. Mara joined me there, carrying 2 cups of coffee. You know, she said, smiling, there's a local rehabilitation center looking for community mentors, people who've gone through the system and can help others navigate it. They're offering a part-time position. I laughed
Softly.
Are you recruiting me? I'm just saying, she replied, nudging my shoulder. You'd be good at it. I looked at the maple tree, at the ring hanging from my neck, at the sun breaking through the cold clouds. Maybe I will, I
Said.
Spring came. Life moved on.
The
AVA Act passed unanimously in the state legislature, providing stipends and counseling for family caregivers.
The
bill signing ceremony was quiet, dignified. I wore the same bracelet Ava had bought at a flea market years ago. When the governor handed me the pen, I could almost hear AA's laugh, half relief, half disbelief. Afterward, I went home and sat by the window as the afternoon light filled the room. The ceramic bowl I'd made in art class gleamed golden. Beside it sat the last envelope I hadn't opened until that
day.
Inside was a note in Ava's handwriting. Riley, if you ever wonder what comes next, look toward the morning. It always arrives, even when you think it won't. And when it does, let it in. I placed the note beside the
Bowl.
The room smelled faintly of lavender, the scent Ava used to dab on her wrists before work. For the first time in a long time, I didn't cry.
I
Simply breathed. Months later, a small ceremony was held at the community center. The director handed me a staff badge with my name printed in bold. Riley Carter, peer mentor. The first person I counseled led was a young man named Theo, recently paralyzed after an
accident.
He avoided eye contact at first, just as I once had. I don't think I can do this, he said. You can, I told him gently. But you won't believe it. Right away. Someone will have to believe it for you until you do. He blinked.
Confused.
Who believed it for you?
I
Smiled. My sister. That night, after everyone had gone, I wheeled myself out to the balcony. The city lights glittered below like scattered stars. The maple's branches swayed in the warm wind. ABA, I whispered. I made it.
We
Made it. A gust lifted through the leaves, brushing my cheek.
and for a
Moment, I could almost swear I felt her hand again. Steady, patient, full of quiet love. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and smiled. Love is a direction. I murmured. And I'm still walking. The wind answered softly, carrying her name through the